Closing arguments have just wrapped up at Nathaniel Veltman's trial in Windsor. He's accused of intentionally hitting a Muslim family with his truck in London in 2021, killing 4 members of the Afzaal family and leaving a 9-year-old boy seriously injured. And for the latest on what's happening in the courtroom, we go live to CTV's Michelle Mlesky in Windsor. So, Michelle, again, we just said that, closing arguments have just wrapped. So where does that actually leave things right now?
So where it leaves things is, as you said, closing arguments have now concluded for both sides. What happens next is the charge to the jury. Now, what's actually happening right now as we speak, the judge and lawyers are in legal arguments in the absence of the jury, which means what they're talking about we can't report on at this point. I did want to mention in the closing arguments of the Crown says they've proven beyond a reasonable doubt not only that Mr. Veltman planned and deliberated this attack, that it also constitutes terrorism. But at the beginning of the day today, Justice Renee Pomerantz started with a mid-trial instruction to the jury based on something he said yesterday. The judge believes that some of the language that Fraser Ball, the Crown attorney, used when he was describing what it was like for police officers, he described the scene as carnage. He talked about the injuries to the family members in what the court believes was very inflammatory language. She instructed the jury to set that aside, to not consider this case based on emotion, that they must consider it based on the facts and not let any thoughts about what the police officers might have been going through and what injuries the victims had, to set that aside as they consider the facts in this case.
Who all was in the courtroom today?
That's a good question. So at the start, it was fairly busy. There was a lot of media here and a fair amount of people from the Muslim community of both Windsor and London. In the middle, it was very empty. Law students were here sporadically, a couple of Windsorites here and there. But I've noticed a marked increase since we came back here yesterday for closing arguments. The courtroom is almost full of folks from Windsor and London's Muslim communities. Family members have driven here to this courtroom to be a part of this last sort of stage in the process. It certainly is a bit of a wait as we now await for the judge's charge to the jury. We don't know when that will begin.
And along with that, closing arguments have happened. We're waiting for the charge to the jury. What about the role of those psychedelics? The talk about that in all of this.
You're absolutely right. That is a pivotal piece of information that the jury must consider. The defense says, and they had a psychiatrist that said that at the time of the attacks and his interviews with police, the accused Nathaniel Veltman was coming down and had sort of what they referred to as adverse effects of being on psilocybin, made him depersonalized, detached. He didn't know where he was, in a dreamlike state and whatnot. The Crown, on the other hand, completely dismisses all of that, believes that the psychiatrist that presented that evidence has based it on Mr. Veltman's self-reporting and on one survey of more than 1,000 people who were asked about side-verse effects. The Crown says it's not based on any specific science. The Crown says that, discussion that the adverse effects impacted his abilities at the time is, they say, just an educated guess at best. So the jury definitely has to consider which side they believe. Was it an adverse effect or was it not?
Well, Michelle, we thank you for your continuing updates for us on this trial. CTV's Michelle Mlesky, live in Windsor. Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.